Hey guys, it's BSS Ben here, and I'm coming at you with a new video. So in this one, we are going to be going over Battle Spirit Saga, a quick how to play for dummies. So in this, we will go over some of the basics of the game, so you can show your friends, or if you also are looking to get into the game, this can hopefully help you kind of understand the mechanics and how Battle Spirit Saga works. So we're going to go over the field first. So we have our play mat here. I'm just going to go over kind of the key details that you have inside of it. So top left, you have your life. You don't want that to go to 0, because once your life gets down to 0, so you have your 5 cores in here. Once that hits 0, you lose the game. And the objective is for you to get your opponent to go down to 0 life, because the minute you hit 0 life, the game is over, and whoever has lost to or went down to 0 life has lost. So that's kind of the objective. You have a burst zone for your burst magic cards, but we'll go over that later. You have your reserve. So within your reserve, you have 4 cores that you start off with. So you have 3 of these blue ones, which is going to be our normal cores, and then this big red one, which is going to be your soul core, which we will go over later. And then here on the right side, we have your cores, or your trash for your cores, here at the bottom, and then your trash for your cards. Then at the top right, you got your good old deck. So when you start the game, after you guys roll dice and decide who goes first or second, you draw 4 cards. So we'll get our 4 cards, and then we're going to explain what these cards are. Alright, so we're going to have our first card. So this is a spirit card. We can tell right here by the spirit indication right there. Some important parts about this card is if you look at the top left, you see the number 3. What that means is it costs 3 cores to be able to put him down, right? And then if you look on the right side, you see the 2 reduction symbols. So that means if I had 2 other things on the field, it would actually reduce his cost by 2 to make him only 1 core to put him down, which I think is a really cool mechanic. One thing I really love about the game. Another piece of it is you see the little levels right there. Since he at level 1 needs 1 core, for spirits they have to have a soul, or they have to have a core on them, sorry, to be able to stay alive. So let's say, for example, we're playing, we want to put Wolf Knight down. So we put him down, and since we start off with 4, we're going to pay our 3 cores right here. We're going to put those in our trash. Then we have to keep a core on to keep them alive. Just because it's a soul core does not mean that there's anything special happening. The soul core, basically what it does is there are certain spirits that need the soul core to do certain abilities, as well as some magic that need the soul core to do special abilities, and even Nexus. The soul core does do stuff, but in this instance, it's just, we treat it as a normal core. So no special reason why I kept it on there. I just wanted to clarify that. And then let's say let's look at our hand. All right, let's say we had a new turn. So at the start of the turn, you always get a core from the void. So your little core case that you have, you just grab one from there. You can only ever have 1 soul core. So that's another important piece of information. Because if you look in mine, I have an extra one just in case I ever lose it. So, but anyway, so at the beginning, so now I have 4 cores in my reserve here, and then we draw a card. So what we're going to do is we're going to put down a Nexus. So if you see right there, it says Nexus. These are like your land pieces. They can do cool things, but for the most part, they are mostly just good things to do to reduce. So we're going to do Amethyst Sanctuary, and since we have something on the board that is purple, it reduces its cost. So we have to pay 1. I do not have to keep a core on my Nexus, because if you look at level 1, it has a 0, meaning that we do not have to have a core on it to keep it alive. But if we wanted to get to level 2 to do its effect, we could then put a core on it. So since we have 2 things down, and another thing that I should probably mention, because I already mentioned colors. So in this game, there are 6 different colors. And if you have the same color down with a symbol, and another thing, the symbols here at the bottom right. That's another important key information for later on. But whenever you have something of the same color, they reduce it. So if this had 2 symbols, it'd be reduced by 2, but that was a new thing that was just put into the game. So for now, we don't have to worry about it. But since this is the same color, reduces, oh, so since we had him down, it reduces its cost. It had 1 reduction, so we only had to pay 1. Boom. So now we have 2 things down. So if we wanted to put down good old Vampire Duke Vlad Diego, if we wanted to, we'd have to pay the 3. But you see, the problem is, once we pay our 3, we don't have any extra cores over here. So we wouldn't be able to keep him on the field alive. So we would have to wait, or we would have to take one from Wolf Knight, and then he would die. So we'll just do that just to kind of showcase what this looks like. So now he has died. Since he does not have a core on him, we have no way of keeping him alive. He goes into the trash. Then we have another thing of magic. So this is actually a white card if you see at the bottom. This is a white magic card. So if we wanted to play this, we would have to pay the full reduction, or the full cost, since we have nothing white to reduce its cost. And if you see here at the top, it actually has a burst effect, meaning we could put it in our burst zone. So what Absolute Ice Shield does, whenever you lose a life, it activates its ability. So let's say I had that in my burst. Our enemy was swinging, we did not choose the block, and we took the life. We could then flip this over because we met the condition of the burst, which is when you lose a life. Something with burst cards is you can pay. So for the normal burst effect, you don't have to pay because the condition is met. We lost a life, we can now do that effect. But if we want to do the main effect, we'd have to pay the full cost. But since we don't have enough cores, we couldn't. But that is just for future reference, how that works. So now you kind of have some of the basics of the game. We have our creatures or our spirits, how we begin the game, of how many cards we get. So we'll actually go back through. So we'll set back up and we're going to start all over as if this was a real game. So this was a real game. We would roll, see who goes first, but we'll say for the video we will go first. So we're going to draw our 4 again. And then when we look at our 4, we decide if we want to keep. So just for the sake of it, we are going to keep, meaning we will draw an extra card and we will go first. So when you go first, you do not get a core. You only draw a card. So what you do, what ends up happening is you do get a card advantage on your opponent. So that is one advantage of going first. If you go second, you get a core and a card. So if we were going first, look at our hands, see what we have. So let's go ahead and put down this Amethyst Sanctuary since it's cheap. We'd pay our 2, and then we would pass it over our opponent. Now, after our opponent is done, we'll say it's our turn now. So since we are going again, it's just after that first turn that you only don't get a core. So now we get our core, we will draw our card, and then we will refresh. Boom. So now we do have our cores. So we have a total of 5 now and 1 thing to reduce. So if we wanted to, we could put this Beldegor down. We could put him down. He only costs 2 since we have our Amethyst Sanctuary that is reducing. Boom, put 1 on there. And then let's look at our hand. See what else we have. Wolf Knight, if we see he has 2 reductions, so he only costs 1. We have 2 cores, so we'd even put him down, pay our 1, put him on there, and boom, we now have 2 spirits on the field. Now we're going to begin what would be our combat. So we're going to take a quick pause. I'm going to set up the other side, and we will see how combat works. All right, so now that we have the battle set up, so how this works is whenever you are attacking your opponent, so I just went ahead and put up, so we see that they have a 2K and a 3K, and then on our side, we actually have a 2K and a 2K. So as of right now, our opponent actually has the advantage on us in terms of our battle power. So the little numbers right here that indicate how strong they are. So, but something that they keep in mind is abilities. Since we are playing purple, one of the really cool mechanics in purple is curse. So if we look at Wolf Knight here, we can see that he has curse. What curse does is, basically it's like death touch if you ever played something like Magic. Whereas whenever I swing, let's say our opponent was to block with this 3000, not only do we die because of curse, or because of battle comparison, but because of curse, they would actually die too, because its ability is that whenever our opponent blocks, we don't really compare BP, right? Since it is curse, it kills it no matter the BP. So that is what we're gonna do. So we're swinging. We'll say our opponent were to block. So then, since it died, we get a core in our reserve. He goes in the trash. Same for their opponent. It would go into their reserve. The card would go in their trash. Now, since we still have 5 lives, let's say I swung with Beldegor and they actually chose not to block. What happens here is they will lose a life, which will go into the reserve, and then he is now exhausted. So then on their turn, he can no longer block. But there are other things that we can do, such as flashing. So the only card I have right now is this Ice Shield. Say they were to attack, I could then flash. If you see there at the bottom, it indicates when we can do it. So this is a flash. So we can only play this during the flash step. There are some cards. Let's see if I can dig through here real quick. So here's another card. This is Double Deadly. It can only be played during the flash. There are some magic cards here, like Core Drain. Core Drain actually has a main effect, and I can only do that effect during the main step. So like when we're putting down our cards. So I can only do that first. I can only do that first ability during the main step. Then it does have a main flash, which we can do at any time. So then we can choose to do either one of those. So that's just an example. So we'll set it back up, and let's say that instead of taking the life, or instead of blocking whenever I swung, let's say I swung, they took the life. Cool. Now, I want to swing here with Beldegor. Let's say I did have that Core Drain in my hand. Since we have 3 things on the field and it costs 3, it costs 3 when it has 2 reduction. We have 3 things on the field. It gets reduced by 2. So it only costs us 1. So let's say I swung with Beldegor after they didn't block here. Let's say they blocked with the 3000. I could then activate its flash effect, which would give me 2 extra 1000 BP. Let's say I paid 1 off of Wolf Knight. Then I now boost Beldegor actually up to 4000 BP because of that little flash ability there. So now that he has 4, so Beldegor is now 4000, 3000, say they have no flash. Then boom, that card would now die. So there is just a more simple way of doing it. So how actual combat works is this. Attacker, they indicate, obviously, the attack. So the minute I swing here, that's when the battle step starts. Flash steps go, defender gets a flash, I get a response, then we go to the block phase, which we saw there. Then once the block phase goes, it is defender gets a flash, I get a flash. Then I do believe they can flash back. So that's just how those phases work. Then let's say it was their turn and they decided to actually attack with Kachi Kachi Rabbit. Beldegor, since he is exhausted, cannot block. I would have to have some other creature up. So let's say that Wolf Knight didn't die. Then I could then block that attack. And then let's say that they had something that hindered that attack and caused him to actually die before we could get to the block step. Then I would have nothing to defend. So that's just some of the basics. The combat is where it gets a little bit more complicated. So if that is something you guys would like me to dive into, I can definitely do a second video. But in terms of just a how to play for dummies, I think I've covered most of the basics. So you have your creatures, your cost. We talked about how if you have other colored creatures or magic, or even Nexus, that you have to pay the full reduction because of color reduction only happens within the color being placed down. So, like our Ice Shield here, it would not have been any sort of reduction or anything. We learned about burst cards as well. We learned some of the basics of combat, found out what Nexus, Spirits, and Magic are. So, if you guys do want to see something more like this, and when we kind of go more into depth with the combat and how the game works, I'd be happy to do that. But for now, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you guys in the next video.